Anyone who's ever worked in production for any length of time has probably heard the phrase good, fast, cheap. Pick two. In other words, most likely your production's not going to be good, fast, and cheap. So you have to pick good and fast and cheap, or cheap and good. Is that the one I missed? I think so. Anyway, pick two. Can't have three. The problem is lots of clients demand three, and then producers try to acquiesce to make it happen. The only thing that happens with a production that aims for good, fast, and cheap is marginality. So if you're interested in marginal projects, aim for all three. If not, I would suggest striking cheap from your production diet as much as possible. Most deadlines are fast. Most clients obviously want something that's good, so that only leaves cheap. If you want to succeed in this business and make a name for yourself, stick with good, stick with fast, and drop the cheap. Be resourceful, be thrifty, be creative, be improvisational, try not to be cheap. Let's start with education. Educating yourself. This show is produced by college students for college students, and that's a great first step. Education doesn't come cheap, but it's really useful. Not too long ago, if you wanted a nice production, you had to spend lots of money, have a big budget, lots of resources, tons of overhead, and that's how you got there. These days, all that separates you from high-quality video is a smartphone and access to the internet and a free post to YouTube. So what else separates that level of production from the level that you strive for? Education, paying for an education, learning about composition, learning about lighting, learning about sound, storytelling, editing. All of those things are really, really important. And when your college career ends, that doesn't end either. Continuing education, online sites like lynda.com to learn new software, new platforms, and new ways of doing things. It's a lifelong process. How about resources like equipment and talent? These are also really important. As a student or someone starting out, you may not have the budget for an array of really nice equipment, but I would suggest this. If you have the budget for 3 or 4 cheap items, don't do that. Buy one really nice item that you've had your eye on, that you've done your research on, that you really think is going to help with your productions. Borrow other pieces of gear, collaborate with other producers who are in the same situation that you are, and then slowly but surely grow that arsenal of really nice production tools. Moving on to human resources, people, even more important, I think, than equipment, is how the equipment is used. So invest in people who have invested in their careers, just like you're doing. There's a series of sites out there. They're known as pay-to-play sites, where basically they're directories, and you can list yourself if you have a few $100s and a little bit of gear and you want to get going. I highly recommend you stay off those sites. Hundreds or thousands of people are bidding for the same jobs, and it quickly becomes a race to the bottom, with everybody bidding lower and lower and lower and lower, hoping to get the job, until all of a sudden, oh boy, I'm now editing this film for $5. Not good. It's cheap, but it's not sustainable. When you get into the position of hiring people, please also stay away from sites like these, because what happens is that $50 documentary narration may sound like a great deal, but you've worked months on your documentary. You've scripted it and shot it and edited it and tweaked it some more. And now do you really want to leave the last bit, the narration or the color correction or whatever else you have to do to it, to someone who's bidding to be low and to be quick? Not really. And what often happens is that hundreds of people bid, the producer gets tired of looking at reels after about 10 or 15 of them, hires somebody, and it's usually the cheapest option. Let's just talk about voiceovers a little bit, because that's what I do. So using that as an example, I started out non-union or pre-union, and that was fine. That was the beginning of my career. I did cheap voiceovers for low-budget productions. They got a VO, I got experience, and I got a credit, and that was really my apprenticeship to joining a union, to becoming a union member, and working through SAG and AFTRA under fair contracts for jobs. So that's totally fine. But then there comes a certain point where you really have to up the game if you want this business to be something that's sustainable. What happens if you've cast a voiceover or hired an editor or a color corrector or anyone else on one of these sites where pretty much they're working for dollars. It seems cheap, but now that file comes back, let's just say it's a voiceover, and you realize, oh, the person I hired, the demo sounded okay, but this sounds like he recorded it in a closet with a cheap USB mic, and there was no pop filter because the mic is popping, and he mispronounced 3 words of my script. Yeah, that's going to happen, and now you've got to hire another voiceover real quick to replace that one, or hire a sound engineer who has magical tools who can take out lots of that noise and hopefully fix it up enough to use it. And this cheap project is becoming more and more expensive and adding more and more time to the project deadline. Let's go the other route. You've put all this work into your documentary. Now you've got the last step. It's your voiceover, your color corrector, whoever. Aim high, pay for someone that obviously you can afford, but that's going to do a good job. In this case, call an agent who represents professional union talent, who've paid their dues, who've bought the professional gear, who took the time to build a studio that sounds and looks great. Now the file comes back, it sounds good, the professional microphone they invested in makes their voice shine, it's professionally delivered, there's no mistakes because they did a little editing on their own and sent it back to you after that fact. And they did their research. So there's no mispronunciations, and you don't have to recast someone at the last minute. So although some of these options seem more expensive in the short term, it's not the case in the long term, and it's really going to do your career and yourself a service. Good doesn't have to cost a fortune. Expensive gear also won't compensate for a lack of preparation or education or pre-production. So if your editor or your lighting kit or your software or your own training stands in the way of you reaching the next level, it's a worthy investment to upgrade. It's going to do you a world of good, it's going to make the industry stronger, and it's going to lead to a body of work that you can really be proud of.